like that, Jim.
It's only right that the organisers of tonight's event are also thanked, and I'm sure you'll do that now. This event allows us here in Castlederg to demonstrate our opposition to the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol. We are here to peacefully express that deep frustration and concern in a democratic and sincere manner, which we are doing tonight, no matter what others may try and say. Tonight's speakers are well known to myself and probably need no introduction to you here. But just in case you're not sure, can you please welcome to the platform Trevor Clark, Jamie Bryson, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson, up there in the far end there, Jim Allister. Ladies and gentlemen, that's me finished. We'll be glad glad to hear it. And I now hand over to Trevor Clark to lead off the speeches.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're visiting, you're very welcome to Castlederg this evening. And it's heartening to see such a sea of faces here, 2 miles from the actual border between the UK and the EU. And seeing so many people here united in purpose against the undemocratic, union dismantling, economy wrecking, and practical and insanely bureaucratic Northern Ireland Protocol. At this stage, I will join in offering my thanks to the organisers for the invitation to address this gathering. And I think we should show our gratitude to West Road United Unionists for making the arrangements for this anti-protocol parade and rally here this evening. So thank you to everyone who's organised, and for everyone, including the bands, who without the bands, we're just a group of people walking down the road. So show your appreciation, ladies and gentlemen, for that. And United Unionists we must be, ladies and gentlemen. The old maxim, united we stand, divided we fall, has never been more relevant. As our opponents line up against us, Dublin, Brussels, and the litany of local parties that want to see a hard protocol, we must stand together to ensure the message to Downing Street is clear after the 5th of May. No ifs, buts, ands, or maybes. The protocol must go. This rally is the latest in a series of such events, most of which are organised on a standalone basis, and like this are locally organised by coalitions of like-minded people. More will follow. And whilst all of the rallies have been peaceful, some self-proclaimed commentators and pro-protocol politicians have expressed the view that events such as this shouldn't take place. Bizarrely, other unionists have withdrawn support for them. Friends, this is not the time for unionism to go weak at the knee. This is not the time for unionism to withdraw or protest, or for our stance to soften in opposition to the protocol. We are a broad enough family to contain different views on many issues, but on this, the union dismantling protocol, we must remain resolute and united in our opposition. And if some parties can subscribe to that, it is for them to explain to you, the public, why they even call themselves unionists. But back to the contention by some that these events shouldn't take place. Of course they should. These events will inform, they will provoke debate, they will provide a platform for fundamental democratic rights of free speech and lawful protest. Our detractors would be happy to see us silenced because they know how the protocol can be used in the advancement of their primary cause, that of a united Ireland. Brussels provides the excuse by claiming the protocol is necessary to protect trade and the integrity of the European single market. In reality, this is nothing but a Trojan horse. The protocol is in fact a means of and a lesson in maximising the obstacles and difficulties for any EU member state, any EU country with any notion of leaving the Hotel California of emerging federal states. And as the song says, you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. And in terms of EU membership, hasn't this proved to be the case for Northern Ireland? As a result of the protocol, we are trapped in the EU customs union, subject to the EU's VAT regime and EU laws that are applied by EU courts. But we can have no say in the formulation of these laws, regardless of the effects they will have on us. In essence, the protocol is a punishment meted out by the EU in response to the British people having what they would consider the audacity to vote in a free election to exit a club that started as a common market, but which has morphed into something that is a couple of steps away from the United States of Europe. And in response, when the UK voted as one nation in 2016 to leave, the financial equilibrium of the EU was disrupted. And that's where the house of cards started to fall in. The easier and more attractive option for Brussels was to make the UK's exit from the EU as difficult as possible, and so we entered into a period of negotiations which should have been handled so much better, but which enabled the Eurocrats to devise a plan to divide the UK, shamefully propped up by Dublin with a veiled threat of a return to Republican terrorism on the border should the British government deliver on the will of its people. And as a border community here in Castlederg, we are only too aware of the role Dublin played in facilitating Republican terrorism in the past. As a safe haven, through state arms acquisition, the existence of lax or non-existent security on the border, and its indefensible extradition policy. We are well aware that the Dublin government continues to dodge the difficult questions about the calls for inquiries into collusion between members of the Garda and IRA murder gangs. But by claiming even a CCTV camera on the land border would cause a return to terrorism, the then Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, was making an implicit threat that his country would again be found to be wanting when it came to acting against Republican murder squads operating along the border. In Castlederg and in many frontier towns, we don't need to be reminded because we haven't forgotten. Aside from the overarching constitutional difficulties, ladies and gentlemen, that have resulted from the protocol, it is causing profound damage to Northern Ireland's economy. 200 British companies have recently stopped trading with Northern Ireland. Why? Because of the protocol-related bureaucracy that is now involved with trading between two constituent parts of the same country. Let me give you a couple of examples that I have heard over recent weeks. Someone I know who works in college tells me that crates that are used to transport poultry from Northern Ireland to GB are now the subject of customs declarations before they can be returned to Northern Ireland empty. Bureaucracy that's unnecessary. And another who shows pedigree cattle in the north of England tells me if he takes his champion cattle to market in Carlisle and they don't sell, he can no longer bring them straight home to Newton Stewart. They have to stay in GB for 6 months. Think about the additional costs involved with all of that. Friends, the protocol is a disaster for trade, and in turn, it is exacerbating the cost of living crisis. Less competition means less choice for consumers and for businesses, and to shortages in supply. Shortages of supply cause production delays, leading to inefficiencies and cost increases. And where do those cost increases ultimately end up? Hurting the consumer, hurting the public. And it's making the situation in Northern Ireland all the worse because of the existence of the protocol. And this cannot be allowed to continue. Perhaps it's no surprise that the beneficiaries of protocol-related disruption are amongst its chief cheerleaders. Last year, trade from NI to the Republic of Ireland increased by 65%. The bad news for us is there's more and worse to come, as the grace periods associated with the implementation of the withdrawal agreement come to an end. Ladies and gentlemen, as we approach the Assembly election in a fortnight's time, there is talk of the increasing prospects of a border poll if Sinn Féin were to emerge as the largest party. I believe the case for the Union is strong enough to withstand any such electoral test. So, it's not a future border poll that I feel we should be concerned about. It's the constitutional change that has already occurred without the consent of the people, and change that is yet to occur that we must reject before it beds in further. There is no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, we live in challenging times. The protocol has been foisted upon us and is another part of the process designed to prize Northern Ireland from its rightful place in the United Kingdom. The election in a fortnight's time is crucial. The British government and our opponents will be watching the results carefully. And we can only afford to send back one message through the ballot box, and it is that the protocol must go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Introduce our next speaker. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Jamie Bryson.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute honour to be here tonight with unionists and loyalists of Castlederg as we once again stand together as a union of unionists standing in opposition to the continued imposition of the Union Subjugating Protocol, which, make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, is designed to put us under the jackboot of the European Union and the Irish government. So let us be absolutely clear about what this protocol does. We, as unionists, we as a country in Northern Ireland are held hostage as it currently stands in an economic United Ireland, and let nobody tell you anything different. And it's for that reason, ladies and gentlemen, that I say that we must all join together as a union of unionists to stand against this injustice. The DUP, the TUV, the PUP, the loyal orders and grassroots unionism and loyalism have answered the call and stand firm in unalterable opposition to the protocol. And lest there be any confusion, I want the UUP and their leader Doug Beattie, who's a decorated military veteran and who's deserving of our respect for that aspect of his public service. I want him to join us on these platforms in opposition to the protocol. I want the party of Carson and Craig on these platforms, standing together as a union of unionists. They are a valued part of the unionist family, and to our family they should return. We need unity, not division. We need a clear and united message in opposition to the Union Subjugating Protocol, and there can be no doubt that that message is stronger when the unionist families stand together as one union of unionists. The act of union must be restored, nothing less will do. The DUP, the TUV and the PUP have publicly committed to that in writing. There is no best of both worlds. There cannot be dual UK and EU market access, which places Northern Ireland on an unequal footing, either in a more advantageous or disadvantageous position from the rest of the United Kingdom. The protocol is not here to stay, because no self-respecting unionist will ever allow it to stay. And nor will any self-respecting unionist tolerate such nonsense as suggestions that the Irish Parliament should sit in this part of the United Kingdom. These absolutely foolish propositions deserve scorn, but I do not believe they in fact reflect the decent people of the UUP or unionism in general. So I call on Doug Beattie from this platform tonight to come back to these platforms. You are wanted and you are welcome to stand together with us in unity. We will differ, and we will differ strongly. The two party leaders to my left disagree and differ on many issues. I'm sure they disagree with me on even more. But Jeffrey and Jim and the PUP are standing together to face the greatest constitutional threat that our country has ever encountered. They are setting other differences aside, and I am proud to stand with them. And I am proud to stand with you tonight in Castlederg as a union of unionists. Every person here, from the platform to the participants, is of equal importance and value, and that must be remembered. Every single person who has taken the opportunity to come out here tonight and demonstrate their opposition is every bit as important, every bit as valued as the people on the platform tonight. So at that juncture, I'd like you to give yourselves a round of applause for coming out here tonight and showing your opposition to this. And I would hope that we do all agree on one thing. The Union Subjugating Protocol and the imbalanced imposition of the Belfast Agreement must go. And if it does not go, then there can never again be power sharing or a unionist inclusive executive in Northern Ireland. I need not point out that no self-respecting unionist or loyalist could ever or should ever facilitate or participate in the subjugation of our precious union. So let me set it out very, very clearly. The Belfast Agreement is and always was a deception. The so-called principle of consent, which pro-agreement unionism claimed was the reason for supporting the agreement, has been shown beyond any doubt to be a fundamental lie. And if you don't believe me, go and read the Court of Appeal judgment in the case brought by Mr. Alistair and representatives of all of the other parties. The principle of consent, ladies and gentlemen, does not protect the substance of our union at all. It is merely symbolic. And when it comes to the union, it seems you can change everything but the last thing being the formal, final handover of sovereignty. However, if by the time you get there, the union has in substance been dismantled, then the principle of consent is no safeguard, it's more akin to a chocolate fireguard. And of course, the incremental dismantling of the union takes place piece, by virtue of the Belfast Agreement process, or as we hear nationalists will say, the spirit of the Belfast Agreement. I've yet to work out how one summons up this spirit to see what it thinks about various things, but nevertheless, the first principle of the Belfast Agreement is what I call the principle of nationalism publication. And what that means is every single ambiguity must be resolved in favour of nationalism. The second is the core ethos that unionism must give and nationalism must get. And given the agreement is a process towards the end of the union, it's obvious to any sensible person there can be no gain for unionism, because that would impede the process itself. So you see, I am not in fact sure that the protocol is in fact inconsistent with the ethos of the Belfast Agreement, because rather, if you believe, as I do, that the Belfast Agreement is really a one-way train to the destruction of the union, then the protocol is in fact entirely consistent with protecting the Belfast Agreement, given it assists that core objective. Of course, the protocol disapplies the core protections of the text of the agreement and its enabling statute, but it only disapplies them for unionists. In short, cross-community consent is a core pillar of this supposed power-sharing agreement, unless, of course, unionism wants to apply cross-community consent in a manner that would impede the destruction of the union, and all of a sudden, cross-community consent no longer matters. Put simply, even the clear text of the Belfast Agreement itself must yield to its core objective of wedging Northern Ireland out of the United Kingdom. So really, I tend to believe that far be it from the protocol being inconsistent with the objectives of the Belfast Agreement, it's in fact a logical outworking of its core objective. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I describe the protocol and the Belfast Agreement as a double knottedness around the neck of the Union. I absolutely stand over that 110%, because that is exactly what it is. And there's some who cling to the Belfast Agreement like sycophantic puppies, unable to accept they've been deceived. Though agreement unionism were fooled on the principle of consent in 1998, that cannot even be credibly in dispute. And to the credit of many, some of them key supporters of the 1998 agreement, they have now disavowed it. However, others, a minority it must be said, are unable to accept the exposure of that deception, and rather than joining us as a union of unionists in saying enough is enough, instead they say, we have been fooled once, but please fool us twice. The Belfast Agreement in relation to unionism is an abusive relationship, the most serious incident being the imposition of this union subjugating protocol. Only a fool, ladies and gentlemen, would remain wedded or supportive of the Belfast Agreement. And that is why the DUP, the TUV, who to their credit have always opposed mandatory coalition, and the PUP have all set out very clearly that the Belfast Agreement in its present form is unworkable and unacceptable. Any power-sharing solution requires fundamental and far-reaching changes to the framework of the Belfast Agreement. Fixing the protocol without fixing the fundamental imbalance in the Belfast Agreement would not, in my view, be a sufficient basis for the formation of an executive, and I hope that all unionist party leaders, or at least those who continue in ultimate opposition to the protocol, agree with that viewpoint. And in equal terms, ladies and gentlemen, the complete disbandment of the provisional IRA was supposedly a precondition to the 1998 agreement. The most recent security assessment by the PSNI and MI5 makes clear that the IRA, a prescribed terrorist organisation, continue to control and direct Sinn Féin. It seems to me obvious, therefore, that complete, verifiable disbandment of the IRA and all their structures should also be a precondition for the formation of any executive. And this week, we heard in the media that some dissident Republican delinquents a bunch of thugs, criminals, drug dealers and informants, who even the IRA viewed as an underclass. Well, given the moral bankruptcy of Sinn Féin and the IRA, that's saying something. Purported to issue threats to members of the unionist and loyalist community. And my first thought when I seen the image was they should probably be careful they didn't shoot themselves in the foot. But after that, my second thought was that of two-tier policing. While the loyalists and bandsmen and women are hounded and harassed for peaceful protest, dissident terrorists can stage an armed show strength with automatic weapons in Belfast without a PSNI officer in sight. Another legacy, ladies and gentlemen, which I'm sure you will appreciate in Castlederg, was the shameful treatment of the RUC, replaced by the PSNI, which operates within the Belfast Agreement framework, hence what I feel is an inherently pro-nationalist bias. But that's a matter for a different day. Returning to these dissident Republican delinquents, the unionist and loyalist community, especially in places like Castlederg, could not be silenced by a 30-year terrorist campaign by the IRA, with all their weapons and their international terrorist support. We most certainly will not be silenced by a gang of criminals and thugs who even the IRA have disowned. If dissident Republicans wish to start attacking the unionist and loyalist community, then that represents a significant development which would not be without consequence. The onus is on the security forces to deal with such threats to peace and stability and to do so swiftly. These people, of course, have been emboldened and encouraged by the fact that the threat of nationalist civil disobedience, and let me remind you, because we're always good at hearing the SDLP forever criticising Jeffrey Donaldson and other unionists, let me tell you what the SDLP's Claire Hanna had to say for herself whenever it came to talking up the threat of nationalist violence. She said, should there be so much as a CCTV camera on the land border, there would be civil disobedience at a very, very minimum. So either I or anybody else will be taking any lectures of Claire Hanna or the SDLP. And of course, the Irish government went to the European Union and talked up the threats of IRA bombs for political leverage, which led directly to the imposition of this union subjugating protocol. And that is the legacy of this wicked, iniquitous, violent, rewarding union subjugating protocol, and that is just another reason why it must go. So as we come to a close, ladies and gentlemen, and as we stand here tonight as a union of unionists, let our message be strong and let it be clear. The act of union is the union, so the act of union must be restored. The Belfast Agreement is a deception, a fraud, and is abusive of the unionist community and our constitutional position. Most of those who were fooled once will not be fooled twice. No more will unionism give, so nationalism can get. After 24 years of this one-sided process, we have given enough and we will give no more. Therefore, our closing resounding message from Castlederg is clear. The union subjugating protocol must go, full stop. No equivocation, no compromise, and in the immortal words of the apprentice boys of Derry, no surrender. So let our message... Ladies and gentlemen, echo from Castlederg tonight. Let it carry across the streets and fields of Ulster. We are the Union of Unionists, and we say, enough is enough! Thank you! Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege to then introduce the next speaker, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson, leader of the Democratic Unionist Party.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and thank you to the organisers of the event this evening for their invitation. I'm delighted to be here back in Castlederg again. I'm joined by a number of my colleagues, Tom Buchanan, Gregory Campbell, Maurice Devaney, and some others who are with us this evening. And we're standing with you because we believe, as our two previous speakers have said clearly, that the one and the most important thing that we must do as unionists in opposing this protocol is to stand together in unity. Because that is absolutely critical. That is the message that our opponents must hear loud and clear. And I want to echo what Jamie has said. I hope that in time, and I welcome the fact that some of the UUP are now beginning to participate again in anti-protocol events. I want to see them on platforms. I want to see them standing united with us in opposition to the protocol, because it is in that unity that we have our strength. I'm not going to repeat what others have said, but I will emphasize just how important it is that this protocol is removed. The Union of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is founded on the Act of Union, or as Jim reminds me often, the Acts of Union. And Article 6 of the Acts of Union is very clear. It states that there shall be no barriers to trade between the constituent parts of the United Kingdom. And the protocol has removed from the people of Northern Ireland that fundamental right that is enshrined in the basic law of the Union. That makes us second-class citizens in our own country. It cannot be right, and it is not right, that when we want to bring goods from one part of the United Kingdom to another, we are subject to customs arrangements. They are unnecessary. The EU do not require customs checks on goods that remain within the United Kingdom. There is no threat to the EU single market from such checks. And therefore, the motivation for this is, I agree, to punish the United Kingdom for leaving the European Union. And we are caught in the middle of that. And indeed, one senior official in the European Union made clear that the price for Brexit would be Northern Ireland. Well, Northern Ireland is not going to be the price for Brexit. The Union will not be broken by this protocol. This protocol must go, and the Union will stay. And that is clearly the position of all Unionist elected representatives. So the Act of Union must be preserved. That means the UK Parliament, which is the sovereign parliament of this country, must introduce legislation to repair the damage that has been done to the Act of Union. Nothing less will do. We need law that clearly protects our right to trade within our own country. Earlier this week, I was briefing an American journalist who was examining the issues around the protocol. And he said, I just don't understand what the problem is. So I gave him an example. Recently, the UK government announced changes to VAT. They granted concessions on VAT. VAT is a form of taxation, as you all know. But they could not apply those concessions to Northern Ireland because of the protocol. And I reminded the American journalist that the American War of Revolution started on the basis of what? The famous Boston Tea Party. No taxation without representation. In other words, it's wrong to be taxed without having a say in how those decisions are made. And yet that is the reality in Northern Ireland today. Many of our rules and regulations of how we live our lives, how we trade, are being made by the European Union. And none of us in this square this evening has any say in how those rules and regulations are made. They are imposed upon us. And yet we were told by the government in London that Brexit meant taking back control. Not so for Northern Ireland, it seems. And so we want to have a situation where those who set our rules and make our regulations are accountable to us. That is the essence of democracy, whether it's in the United States of America or in the United Kingdom. And so the protocol must go. It undermines the Union. It reduces us to second-class citizens because we cannot trade freely within our own country. It debases democracy. It gives us a form of government without proper accountability. It imposes laws and regulations over which we have no say. And I agree, no self-respecting unionist should believe that the answer to that is to create another North-South body to regulate this, with the pretense that somehow that would fix the problem. It's not even a sticking plaster, never mind a solution. The problem is more fundamental than that. What we need is protection of law for our place within the United Kingdom. And if those who say that consensus is the way forward, those who say that the principle of consent is important, then how can they oppose a law that merely restores our rights as citizens of our own country? That's what we are demanding. That our rights are protected in law within the United Kingdom. Trevor made reference to the election. I'm not here tonight. This is not an election rally. I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. But I am here to say this, and it's particularly important in this constituency, but right across Northern Ireland. It's important that as unionists we vote wisely and that we transfer our votes down the unionist ticket to return more unionists to Stormont, to ensure that our voice is clear. Because I think the message we want to come out from this election is that more people who oppose the protocol have been returned to Stormont. And I think that will be a very strong message from the people of Northern Ireland. So it is fundamentally important. We passed on the parade this evening, the War Memorial, the centre of Castlederg. I was at an event there recently to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the murder of a UDR soldier in these parts. Many sacrificed their lives so that we could continue to have the freedom of democracy. And that includes the right to vote. And I encourage all of you, no matter how frustrated you might feel with the political process, come out and vote on the 5th of May. It is critical that we get the highest turnout of unionists that we've seen for many, many years. And that we vote down the ticket and we return the maximum number of unionist assembly members to Stormont. And that way we will send a very clear message that will be heard in the corridors of power. Earlier today I was in Londonderry, and I took the opportunity to visit a place where Colonel Murray, who was instrumental in the shutting of the gates of Derry, as it was then called, at the time of the siege. I was reading some things about the siege. Of course, we've come a long way since then and things have changed. But I think the spirit of those apprentice boys is alive today across unionism. And what they understood was two things. That sometimes it's right to say no. That sometimes the right thing to do is to say, this is wrong, and we will not accept it. And secondly, that they stood together and that in their combined effort, it was that unity that took that defiant act and closed those gates. And so began the siege. And so I think it is right for all of us to stand together and show that unity, whatever our differences, and we have our differences, as we've been reminded, but they pale into insignificance compared to that which unites us, our passion and belief in the Union. Our desire to ensure that peacefully and lawfully and democratically we will assert our right as British citizens to trade freely within our own country. So thank you for coming out this evening to support this rally. It is right that we do so, peacefully and lawfully, demonstrating our opposition to the protocol. Let us continue to do so, Let us stand together in unity in doing so, because it is in our unity that we find our strength. I now have pleasure in inviting the leader of the traditional unionist voice, Jim Alistair, to address the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you in Castlederg tonight. I can never come to Castlederg without thinking of the 30 sons and daughters of this town and district who were butchered by the IRA over the years. And of course, I need hardly remind you that the great cheerleaders and justifiers of those vile, bloodthirsty murders was Sinn Féin. And it is no coincidence that the greatest cheerleaders for the protocol are the same Sinn Féin. Why? Because the protocol is obtaining what the IRA could not achieve. It has moved the border in terms of trade from where it should be to the Irish Sea. It has created a situation where an all-Ireland economically is evolving. And whether you read the dozens of pages of the protocol or not, whether you understand the minutiae of what it says, the message of the protocol is summed up in this simple fact that this iniquitous protocol declares that the other part of our United Kingdom is a foreign country. That is the reality of the protocol, that the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is no longer united as a trading entity. It is now a disunited United Kingdom, because the protocol decrees that Great Britain is a third or a foreign country. That is why the EU declares that there must be checks coming from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. Because when you bring goods from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, you're bringing them from one sovereign British territory to sovereign EU territory in terms of trade, because we have been annexed into the EU single market, its customs code, its VAT regime, and it is the EU's writ, not the British writ, that runs in Northern Ireland under the protocol affecting our trade. So that tonight, over half the laws that govern our economy are made not in Belfast, not in London, but in a foreign jurisdiction over which we have no say. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the very dismantling of the union in which we all believe before our very eyes. Make no mistake about it, customs posts, the iniquitous puts posts that implement those checks, are the very manifestation of that fact that you're moving from British-controlled territory to EU-controlled territory. And that is something that no unionist could ever tolerate. That is why Sinn Féin are the ultimate cheerleaders for the protocol, because they recognise it is dismantling the union. It is doing the very thing the IRA could not do. And that surely is something that no one worthy of the name unionist can live under or accept. And yet, we have a candidate in this constituency who tells us the very same language as Sinn Féin. The protocol is here to stay. Well, I've got a message for him tonight. This protocol will go, must go, because this union will be, must be maintained. And of course, we all should understand what the political intent and agenda of the protocol is. It's not just about trade, it's not just about economics, it's about building an all-Ireland both economically and politically. How do you do that? By making it increasingly difficult to trade with your main market in Great Britain, to force business to trade north-south increasingly, to build an all-Ireland economy in the sure and certain belief that if you can unite the island of Ireland economically, then it is a short step to where they want to get to politically. And any unionist who doesn't get that doesn't get the protocol. That is why we gather here tonight in the realization that if we do not kill this protocol will kill the union. And I'm perfectly sure that the people of Castlederg, who stood with such valour, with such courage against the IRA, are not now going to lie down under a protocol that does the very work that the IRA couldn't achieve. That is why, as unionists, we need to resolve that we in this generation will not fail. The future of this land lies with us. The challenge to each of us: are we going to be the generation that lost the union? Because if we allow this protocol to continue, then this union is slowly but surely ebbing away. And remember this, we're only in the shallows of the protocol. We have seen nothing yet because of the grace periods. And that is why it is vital and critical that this protocol is not permitted to bed in any further. And the message of the 5th of May has to be that unionists will not put up with being subjugated and edged out of this union. And let that be the message that rallies across this constituency of West Tyrone. Unionists need to speak with strength, not weakness. And that is the opportunity that arises. And I trust it's an opportunity that is taken. Because I want to look my grandchildren in the eye and say, I did my bit. I fought as hard as I could to protect this union. And I'm sure you want to do the same. And just as the wicked IRA were unable to subvert this union, so the wicked protocol must not be permitted to subvert this union. And with that resolve, let us leave tonight determined that as unionists, we are those who will stand in our day against the threat that manifests itself against the union. Because it is the union, ladies and gentlemen, that unites us. It's the union that preserves our position. It was fought for and bought at a huge price. It cannot, by the securing and the trickery of the protocol, be something we let slip through our fingers. So I urge you, I encourage you to stand firm. And standing firm together, we can, like our forefathers did, defeat the present threat to this very union. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Go home encouraged that people are prepared to rally and to stand and to get the message that this protocol, we will not put up with it. We cannot abide it. We will not lie down under it, because to lie down under it is to accept the end of the union in which we all believe. Thank you very much.